first political convention, the GOP got together. That's God's old party, and the headlines are in 1 Samuel chapter 8. The elders convened the party. They wanted a new leader. Samuel, the old leader, was crestfallen, but God reassured him. They're rejecting me, not you, he said. You see, the elders wanted a new leader who would protect their rights. They were the privileged, the 1%. They wanted somebody who would defend Second Amendment rights and keep the military strong so that the things they'd accumulated would continue to be theirs. And God told Samuel to warn them about the ways of the king. Now, that's a technical word, the ways. It's translated in different ways by our different versions. Some call them the rights and privileges of the king, or the customs, or the manners. The word is most often translated the justice of the king or of God. You see, those are the two options. Now, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 10 and following have Samuel describing the ways of the king, that is, the justice of the king. It's all about recruiting, that is, drafting the children of the people to serve the king. There are going to be higher taxes and new economic policies that stuff the pockets of the king. The palace will become more palatial, the army will become more formidable, and the people will pay for it. God had anticipated this constitutional convention. There was an earlier constitution set up by Moses, and it's described in Deuteronomy. That's the constitution of the people of God. And it describes God's justice. In anticipation of a king, God warned that a king should not accumulate a big army or a lot of gold and silver through taxes and economic exploitation, or even against human trafficking, the kind of thing that allowed Solomon to accumulate 1,000 wives. Now, the real issue is not only human trafficking, but the fact that Solomon was making alliances with all the nations around and establishing their embassies, that is, their high places and their temples, all around the temple in Jerusalem. 200 years before King Saul stepped into the palace, God had warned against this kind of thing. The Constitution describes God's justice this way. It's a personal thing. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12 says, you should love God. That is, walk with God. Obey God. Serve God. Go God's way. God chose you. And then verse 17 gets to the nitty-gritty of the plank on the platform of God's party. You see, God makes justice for, and then you fill in the blank. The middle class? The 1%? Who is it that gets justice? Deuteronomy says God makes justice for orphans and widows and loves undocumented aliens. In fact, he feeds and clothes them. And you should do the same because you all are migrants. Nobody ever grew up in this place. We've all come here one way or another. God's justice takes care of the people on the edge, at the bottom. That's the political plank of the party of God. Now, I say this is a couple hundred years before Saul. Thousands of years before that, you have the creation story, in which God creates humans, male and female, in the image of God. That is, as representatives of God, when God steps back, representatives of God to take care of planet Earth, to take care of each other, to organize and to manage and to, that is, take care of this place, exercise governance here. And all of that is to say that it is not a politics of the 1 or the 1% or whoever's got the power at the top, but it's a politics of making sure that the ones who might be left out are drawn in. The ones who are on the margin are brought to the center. He says to Abraham and his descendants and all the people of his house, that is, all the people of faith, practice justice and righteousness. So, here's the 2020 election advice from God. Vote yes for Jesus by voting yes for the people on the margins. Say yes to Jesus in 2020.